Good day everyone, this is Kamay and together with my group we are going to be presenting our primary source analysis worksheet, and we have chosen the written primary source analysis worksheet, and it's about the official treaty document of the Treaty of Paris 1898. So let's move on to the comprehensive description and summary of the written primary source. So basically, to sum it up, the Treaty of Paris is a written agreement that officially ended the Spanish-American War between the United States and Spain. And it basically marked the end of Spain's long colonial rule over its colonies, including us, the Philippines, and the start of America's rise as a global power. So now, as we read this document, it gives us a sense of how formal and serious the negotiations were, as both sides were trying to protect their own national interests. On one side, the Spain trying to lessen its loss after their military defeat. On the other hand, we have the US aiming to expand its influence. So overall, this treaty is very important because it didn't just end a war, it also changed the course of history for many countries, especially the Philippines. Now we move on to the relevance or significance of the document as a primary source of Philippine history. So this Treaty of Paris is very important in Philippine history because it marks the moment when Spain gave up the Philippines to the US without the consent of the Filipino people. So it decided the fate of the country, even though we, the Filipinos, have already declared our independence earlier that year. And it helps us understand how the Philippine transition from being a Spanish colony to becoming a US colony, and how it affected how this transition affected the people's fight for true freedom. So by studying this treaty, we can see that it helps us trace the roots of the Philippine colonial struggles and understand the historical context of our independence movement. So now we move on to sourcing, how we acquired our primary sources. So I'm gonna make it quick. So who wrote or created the document? We have the two countries, United States and Spain, by their peace ambassadors. And to name the individuals, in the United States we have Davis, Fraye, Gray, and Reed. In Spain we have Rios, Abaruza, Garnica, Villaverde, and Cerrero. And the publisher is the U.S. Government Printing Office from Washington, D.C. And what is the author's perspective or position in the historical event? So we also, again, we have both sides, both sides' perspective, because there are both two authors, two countries. United States, they viewed the treaty as a victory and justification for intervention in the Spanish-American War. In Spain, they saw it as a forced surrender under unfavorable conditions because after their military defeat, they had no choice but to do this diplomatically to save face. When was it written? So it is divided into three parts. We have when was it written, ratified, and then when was it proclaimed. So it was written on December 10, 1898, ratified on February 6, 1899, and then it was proclaimed on April 11, 1899. So where was it written? Paris, France, hence why it is named Treaty of Paris. And why was it written? To formally end the Spanish-American War. So it spanned over April to August 1898. So who is or are the intended audience? So we have the governments of the United States and Spain, the international community to acknowledge the end of the war and new territorial claims. And third, we have the public and historians for transparency and documentation. So where was it published? It was published in Washington, D.C. Where is it currently located, stored, or found? It's in the U.S. National Archives, Washington, D.C., under the General Records of the U.S. government. And the digital and transcript versions where we acquired our primary source is published by the Office of the Historian, U.S. Department of State. So you can find our primary source in the official government website, Office of the Historian. So the name is the Office of the Historian. And what is the type of primary source? So it is a government document. Next, we also what is the other significant information and insights about sourcing. So this source is authentic and credible because it comes directly from a US government archival publication. It's considered a primary source because it was created during the actual historical event by official participants, and the office of the historian ensures that transcription accuracy and historical integrity.
Okay, so let's talk about contextualization. Significant events in histories that were happening when the document was created. The Spanish-American War 1898 had just ended, with the US defeating Spain in battles like Manila Bay. Filipinos had declared independence on June 12, 1898 and were forming the first Philippine Republic, though this was not recognized internationally. So let's talk about the author's background and motivation. The treaty was negotiated by Spain and the United States. Spain wanted to end the war and settle losses, while the U.S. aimed to gain overseas territories, including the Philippines. Filipinos also were excluded from the talks. Next, we have intended audience background. The main audience was the governments of Spain and the U.S. It also indirectly concerned U.S. citizens debating imperialism, Spaniards facing the loss of empire, and colonized people whose fate was decided without them. Next, how may the content and manner of writing of the document affected by the significant or influential events that were happening when it was written? The treaty used formal diplomatic language. Its terms reflected U.S. victory and Spain's weakened state. Filipino independence efforts were ignored, as neither Spain nor the U.S. recognized the First Philippine Republic. Lastly, we have the other significant information and insights about contextualization. The treaty ended Spanish rule and transferred the Philippines to U.S. control for $20 million. It also set the stage for the Philippine-American War, showing how global power shaped colonial outcomes.
Good day, sir. I'm Raza. Today I'm going to present my complementary primary source titled Comment on the Treaty. This source is a compilation of news editorial and political commentaries from different US papers, such as the Atlanta Constitution, the Hartford Courant, and the Leavenworth Times. It was written during the time when the United States Senate was debating whether to ratify the Treaty of Paris in early 1899. The article shows both how Republican and Democratic newspapers were mostly urging the Senate to ratify the treaty, even though there were controversies about taking control of the Philippines. These editorials were created by the editorial boards of various newspapers and presented publicly, and political opinions in the US during the time. The compilation was published on February 6, 1899, in Washington, D.C., at the height of the Senate debates. Its main purpose was to inform the American public and to influence senators to approve the treaty, which would officially end the Spanish-American and transfer the Philippines to U.S. control. This source helped me better understand how the fate of the Philippines was decided not by the Filipino themselves, but by foreign powers. While the Treaty of Paris shows the legal and diplomatic side of the transfer, the comment on the treaty reveals how Americans viewed and justified it. They believed they were bringing peace even though it actually marked as the beginning of American colonization in the Philippines. Together, these two sources complement each other because the Treaty of Paris shows the official decision while the comment on the treaty reflects the public and political reaction behind that decision. It it helped us realize that history is not just about documents and laws, it's also about people who respond, debate, and shape those decisions. Thank you, sir.
Good day, this is Ompan. For my presentation, I'll be discussing two important documents in Philippine history, the Treaty of Paris of 1898 and the Malolos Constitution of 1899. These two sources show the completely opposite perspectives about the Philippines at the end of the 19th century. The Treaty of Paris was signed on December 10, 1898, officially ending the Spanish-American War. Through this treaty, Spain conceded the Philippines to the United States for $20 million, treating our country as territorial property that could be sold. What's more striking is that no Filipino representatives were present during the negotiations. On the other hand, the Malolos Constitution that was ratified on January 21, 1899, just months after the declaration of the Philippine independence, it was drafted by Filipino delegates under former President Emilio Aguinaldo to establish the first Philippine Republic, a sovereign, democratic, and independent nation governed by the Filipinos themselves. These two documents clearly contradict each other. The Treaty of Paris viewed the Philippines as a colony to be transferred, while the Malolos Constitution viewed it as a free and self-governing republic. One erased our independence and the other affirmed it. Learning about these opposing sources helped me to understand better the struggles and determination of our ancestors while foreign powers saw us as prize of war. In the end, these two documents remind us that Philippine history is just not about colonization, but about unending the fight for independence and national identity. Thank you.
Fernandez, and the primary source is Aguinaldo's First Protest. It is a manifesto written by Emilio Aguinaldo that rejects the United States' claim of sovereignty over the Philippines after the Treaty of Paris in 1898. As the name implies, it was written by Emilio Aguinaldo, leader of the revolution and the first president of the Philippines, who led the fight against Spain and the US for national independence. It was written in January 5, 1899, and was written at Malolos, Bulacan, the seat of the First Philippine Republic. It was created to protest the US sovereignty and assert Filipino independence, and also to clarify that Filipinos never consented to American control under the Treaty of Paris. Information and insight observed was Aguinaldo's viewpoint, showing their rejection of US control and desire for true independence, which the Treaty of Paris ignores. It highlights Filipino protest against being ceded without consent and their assertion of national sovereignty. This manifesto helped us understand the opinions of the first president and how he protested against the treaty's signing.
This is Ompat again. The close reading is all about the Treaty of Paris of 1898, which ended the Spanish and American War. This treaty focused on transferring sovereignty from Spain to the United States and paying $20 million. Its goal was to formalize peace between two nations, but however, it left out the perspective of the Filipino independence, which was on June 12, 1898. This shows neither both Spain and America recognize the independence of our country. The language of the treaty, using words like cede, relinquish, and transfer, made colonization sound legal and acceptable. Other sources like the Malolos Constitution contradict this by asserting Filipino independence. Overall, the treaty was not a peace agreement. It revealed imperial mindset at the time, where power and control mattered more than freedom and self-determination.
So hello everyone. I'm Carl Francisci Cabalda, and in conclusion, the Treaty of Paris of 1898 showed how Spain ceded the Philippines to the US for $20 million, starting American colonization and excluding Filipino voices. Historical literacy helped me see its political intent and imperialist nature. And we realized history is often told from the colonizer's view, showing the need for critical thinking and appreciation of Filipinos' fight for true independence.